Same-Sex Marriage Bill 2013, first reading.
The Honourable Lynn McLaren.
Thank you. I move that the bill now be read a second time. Mr. President, it's my solemn and heartfelt privilege today to introduce a bill to remove discrimination in Western Australia for adult couples who love each other and want to get married. It isn't often that one has an opportunity to make the world a better place. Tabling this bill, which sets out the legislative framework for same-sex marriages, is one of those major milestones in a long journey for social justice and equality. In the week that we farewell Nelson Mandela, one of history's best-loved social justice activists, it is a fitting tribute to his ideals. His legacy includes appointing an openly gay judge to South Africa's High Court of Appeal, and during his presidency, South Africa became the first nation in the world to constitutionally prohibit sexual orientation-based discrimination. The first same-sex marriages in South Africa were performed in 2006. Nelson Mandela said, and I quote, "We must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always ripe to do right. It is my fervent hope, and the hope of many others, that the members of this Parliament will think kindly on the policy objectives of this bill and act with some urgency to make love equal." During the past year, we've witnessed an increasingly popular campaign for marriage equality in Australia. The ACT was the first jurisdiction to pass legislation in Australia. Ceremonies began there last weekend. We heard this morning that those marriages, some 20 of them, have been annulled or will be annulled according to the High Court decision. And at this point, I want to express my congratulations to the Honourable Stephen Dawson, who travelled to Canberra to get married, and today finds his marriage annulled. That, my friends, is not an ideal outcome in today's day and age, and I feel strongly for him and how he must be very suffering today. Similar bills have been introduced in Victoria and South Australia, in the New South Wales and Tasmania. This bill is a different bill. I have learned from those experiences, and the same-sex marriages bill before you has been amended according to what we've learned from those other experiences. From the sidelines, Western Australian and the West Australian Parliament has watched the campaign grow in strength and the number of supporters build to now represent the majority of Australians. Australian marriage equality is marching towards an historic victory. The state of Western Australia has a proud tradition of human rights law. The 2001 election of the Gallop government with the Greens and the balance of power in the Legislative Council heralded major gains in removing discriminatory laws for GLBTI people, their relationships, and their families. It was the law reforms passed in 2002 and 2003 that finally expunged the anti-gay preamble from the WA's law books and passed comprehensive equal opportunity laws covering sexuality. The legislative package also reformed dozens of different laws to allow same-sex couples to be treated exactly the same as de facto heterosexual couples in virtually every area of the law. In 2001, I made a member statement expressing my support for marriage equality and urging all Western Australians to call upon the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia to amend the Commonwealth Marriage Act 1961 to provide for marriage equality. The federal move, though unsuccessful, attracted more support than ever before, with 48 members in the House of Representatives supporting a bill to amend the Marriage Act of 1961. In fact, it was due to the lobbying by my constituents in the South Metropolitan region that the member for Brand changed his vote supporting that bill. Just a few months ago, the federal parliament voted on a bill to recognize overseas same-sex marriages in Australia. This too was unsuccessful, but has attracted more attention to the issue. Because the federal bills were unsuccessful, we now have an opportunity, and I would say a responsibility, to legislate at the state level for same-sex marriage. In recent times, several members of Parliament have spoken in favor of marriage equality in this chamber and in the other place. A cross-party committee in New South Wales concluded that states could indeed legislate for same-sex marriage. The situation in which WA finds itself parallels that of the states of the United States of America. Now, today, in the absence of federal marriage equality laws, 16 states in the USA have passed laws to extend marriage rights to same-sex couples. California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington State have all laws for same-sex marriage. Same-sex marriage is legal in 16 countries. They are the Netherlands, Belgium, Spain, Canada, South Africa, Norway, Sweden, Portugal, Iceland, Argentina, Denmark, France, Brazil, New Zealand, Uruguay, and Britain. Mexico City also performs same-sex marriages that are recognized in all 31 Mexican states. Other places where reform is imminent include Finland, Slovenia, Paraguay, and Nepal. Many Western Australians have traveled abroad to tie the knot at great expense because marriage laws here have excluded them. One of my constituents wanted to share this in support of the bill, and I quote, "We would also love the right to defend ourselves against homophobia by having our relationship recognized as equal to other married couples under the law. In our eyes and the eyes of our families, we're already married, and our relationship is respected. But as long as it's unprotected by law, we will always be vulnerable to derision and discrimination." Other advocates for marriage equality agree. The former Pride WA co-president, Paul Van Lieshout Hunt, who I note is with us today in the public gallery, provided this statement. Pride WA firmly hold the stance that gay marriage will aid in ending discrimination against people of diverse sexuality and gender. Furthermore, acceptance of gay marriage and equal marriage rights will result in lower rates of mental health disorders and general health of the LGBTIQ community. Where the Australian Parliament has faltered, we can succeed. Couples are asking for it. Their mums and dads, brothers and sisters, daughters and sons, cousins, nephews, niece, aunts, uncles, friends, at work colleagues, and even your teammates have all supported this campaign for marriage equality. Opponents of marriage equality will argue that allowing same-sex marriage will cause potential damage to children and to the sacred institution of marriage. However, neither of these claims is borne out by the evidence. The American and Australian psychological associations agree that the children raised by same-sex couples are just as well adjusted as their peers. The American Association has gone further, finding that if the children of same-sex couples experience any harm, it is due to the fact that their parents can't marry. Meanwhile, despite all the doom-mongering to the contrary, studies in North America and Europe have found that allowing same-sex couples to marry actually strengthens the institution of marriage rather than redefining or weakening it. Now, there is a high level of awareness among ordinary Australians about the discrimination inherent in current Australian marriage law. Australia's federal political leaders are out of step with most Australians on this. They should listen to what the surveys say. Most voters want marriage equality. In fact, each time the pollsters go out into the streets, the numbers in support grow higher. The Galaxy research polling from 2009 to 2012 showed that 64% of Australians support marriage equality. A majority of Christians, 53%, support marriage equality. 76% of coalition voters want Abbott to allow a conscience vote. And he is now our current premier when the... yes, Mr. President, I'll just note that I mean the Prime Minister, Tony Abbott. At the time of the poll, he was not the Prime Minister, so I'm sorry that his name doesn't reflect that.
Sure. The other point is, if you're referring to a member, particularly of an executive in another jurisdiction, you use their correct title. So if you're
Thank you.
referring, so it's the Honourable Tony Abbott.
Of course, the Honourable Prime Minister Tony Abbott. But it's just important to know that 76% of voters would like our Prime Minister to allow a conscience vote. 81% of young people, 18 to 24 years old, support marriage equality. Civil unions fall short of marriage equality reform that the majority of Australians want. Now, it's high time that Western Australia joined these other civilized states and nations in rejecting prejudice and embracing marriage equality. Mr. President, this will make an important difference in the lives of many Western Australians. There are disproportionately high rates of depression, suicide, and self-harm amongst people of diverse sexuality and gender. From countering homophobic bullying in schools to preventing discrimination in aged care, there is still much work to be done. The signal sent by removing discrimination in marriage will make a positive difference to the experiences of both younger and older Australians and how others relate to them. I'm willing to see this struggle through to its finish, until the day when every young person in Australia will grow up knowing true equality, freedom, and dignity. The Same-Sex Marriage Bill 2013 sets up a separate form of same-sex marriage at a state level that is conceptually distinct from marriage provided for by the Federal Marriage Act. And it provides for the following: same-sex marriages between adults, authorization of celebrants to solemnize same-sex marriages, amendments to the Births, Deaths, and Marriages Registration Act 1998 to provide for the registration of same-sex marriages, amendments to the Family Court Act 1997 to provide for the dissolution and annulment of same-sex marriages, and for other related financial matters. There are consequential amendments to other acts and related purposes. While this bill is a large step towards marriage equality by providing for same-sex marriage in Western Australia, it falls short by not addressing inequality for transgender, transsexual, and intersex people. The Parliament should also act to end the discrimination against these vulnerable communities who suffer high rates of suicide and self-harm. It is in this area of discrimination that a cross-party working group of state parliamentarians should contribute to significant reform. While this inequality exists, several organizations will continue to support and advocate on behalf of LGBTIQ people, including the Human Rights Commission, the Equal Opportunity Commission, the Gender Project, Equal Love WA, Gay and Lesbian Community Services, the Freedom Center, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, Pride WA, and many others. Look, someday soon, and I've said this before, but someday soon, I do hope we'll look back on this whole same-sex marriage debate and wonder what all this fuss was about. We will wonder how such inequitable and prejudicial laws that could prevent someone from marrying the person they love could have been allowed to persist for so long. When considering this bill in the months to come, I ask members to remember the words of Nelson Mandela: "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives that will determine, to the lives of others, that will determine the significance of the life we lead." Mr. President, I might just repeat that if that's okay.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I would like to just say that last sentence again, which is to emphasize, it is what difference we've made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. Members, this bill is not a bill which is a uniform legislation bill, so pursuant to Standing Order 1261, I would like to advise you of that. I also tabled the explanatory memorandum.
The explanatory memorandum is tabled and the second reading debate on that bill stands adjourned until the next sitting of the House.